Limehouse Basin, start of the walk. And I'm not sure I could have picked a worse day to start a walk along the Regents Canal from the Limehouse Basin, because today is London Marathon Day and it feels like half the world is down here. That's the start of the Regents Canal, just over there with that bridge that about 3,000 people are trying to cross right now. That's where I've got to get to start my walk. And this is the queue to get into Limehouse DLR station, where I just had to fight my way out of it. Incredible, really. So I suppose we should crack on. And I would have, of course, got a shot of the canal from that bridge, but you can see why I'm not. And actually the next bridge along is on the marathon route. So that's where the runners are all going. So let's get beyond these two bridges and then I think we'll be all right. I hope we can get onto the towpath. So this here is the start of my walk along the Regents Canal. Technically you could say it's the end of the Regents Canal, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Because really it's to connect the Grand Junction Canal, I think, with the Limehouse Basin rather than the other way around. And this is the first of 12 locks. Yes, lock 12, because there is a little bit of debate. I saw a figure of 13 on the internet this morning, but 12 was on the Canal and River Trust, and I think they know how many locks are on their canal. And there's a rather fine narrowboat just about to come through the lock with all that hullabaloo going up on Commercial Road. And I don't know how many bridges there are, so let's try and count them. This is the first one we're going to go through. Some of them will go over, I think, but we're going to go through this one. And we are out the other side. Hopefully now that's the end of the marathon crowds. No disrespect to the people running the marathon. It's a heroic effort. It's just the million people that I would quite like to avoid on my walk. So that's the walk we're doing today, the Regents Canal. It's mad. In all the time that I've lived in London, in many, many years, I've never walked the entire length of the Regents Canal. From end to end, from basin to basin, from Limehouse Basin to Paddington Basin. Nor have I walked from Paddington Basin to Limehouse Basin. Not once. Not once. So that is today's walk. And it should be a simple, straightforward, pleasant stroll. I've got to admit, one of the reasons I've not done it as a video is it is incredibly congested at the best of times. And I just thought today is a bit of a murky, cloudy, unpleasant, windy, cold late April day. There won't be so many people on the canal. Unbearable on a lovely sunny day. I thought today would be all right. And the Regents Canal is about 8.5 miles long. I think it's 8.6 miles long, which I reckon, given my past form, I reckon I can turn that into a 12-mile walk without any trouble whatsoever. And here is the second bridge of the walk. I'm going to guess now, I think we're going to go through something like 40 bridges. Of course, really, I suppose the traditional way to do this walk would be from Paddington to Limehouse, because that was the first section that opened. The Paddington section opened. I'll put the date on the screen. My feeling is that it was 1812 or 1816. Obviously, I could look at the notes in my pocket on my phone, but I'm holding my camera. But this section dates from 1820, which I think is from Angel to here. So I think that's the two sections, Paddington to Angel, or King's Cross actually, and then King's Cross to Limehouse, because, well, the obstacle of Angel itself, the tunnel, we'll deal with all of that when we get there. And I think rather than me call out every bridge, should we just have it as like a trivia question that you can answer at the end, like see how many bridges you count along the way? Obviously, you might not want to count bridges, but I just think it will get tiresome if I call out every one. So I think there's going to be maybe a lot more than 40. And this is Salmon Lane Lock. And of course the lock's an incredibly important part of this canal because we are going to be walking it uphill, which should be an interesting experience. I think the Regents Canal drops 86 feet from Paddington to Limehouse. 86 feet, that's quite a distance, isn't it? That's quite a height to drop over the course of its 8.5 miles. Some of you will have seen a video where I walked along here not long ago, actually, a month or so ago, and someone did ask me about that brick tower there, and I'll put it on the screen. I did used to know, and it's one of those things I've just simply forgotten, but it did come up on the Black Ditch walk with Tom Bolton as well. And this is one of the great London walks. I mean, I suppose I haven't been able to kind of declare that in the past because I hadn't done it. So, but it is there. I mean, I know some of people in the comments have said this is the walk they do when they come to London. And it's, you know, it's such an important part of the infrastructure of London, such an important part of the story of its development when they were linking the docks down there at the East End to the rest of the country via the existing canal network, the Grand Junction Canal. And we'll talk more about that, about the water supply. Where does all this water come from? And I remember someone asking me that years and years ago. I think when I was doing the walk with Nick Papadimitriou, and we were like, hang on a moment. I think it was probably when we walked over the canal feeder, which is up at the Welsh Harp Reservoir in Brent. However, what's interesting about that is that canal feeder was only built in the 1830s, 1835. They dammed the River Brent to create the Welsh Harp Reservoir and then to channel water along the canal feeder into the Regents Canal. So what did they do for the 19 years before that, between 1816 and 1835? That's something we'll talk about as well as we go along. I don't want to bombard you. You don't want facts, do you? Do you want facts? There'll be some facts on the screen probably, because I'm just like having a stroll. I think this is the experience really. You should just come down, have a stroll. I've got a book in my bag about the Regents Canal. There's some great stories, all sorts of dodgy dealings, as I'm sure you can imagine. Probably still are. So these boats are an important part of any walk along the canal, an important part of the story of the canal. Here's a little trivia question for you though, just to ponder as we walk. When do you think the last commercial boat travelled on the Regents Canal? The last commercial boat to travel along the Regents Canal? The Ragged School Museum, another feature from that recent walk. And this was I think this is the original Dr. Bernardo's home, and a legacy really of the terrible child poverty in the East End, which hasn't completely gone. We like to think of these things as a thing of the past, but there is still terrible child poverty in this area, despite what you might think. With these new blocks of flats and stuff, there's still a lot of poverty in East London. Third lock of the day. Majestic things they are, aren't they? I love the locks. And this lock is called Johnson's Lock, which I think is after Ben Jonson, the Elizabethan poet and playwright who we talked about on the Shoreditch walk, who I associate with that area of London, but he must have an association with Mile End, so that's something to potentially look into. You can see Ben Jonson Road here, and there's Ben Jonson's School. And this is the stretch which is going to take us up to the Mile End Road. A glorious expanse of water, eh? And this barge here looks like a working boat, doesn't it? I think they still do move things around on the canal, which would make my answer to the last commercial barge on the canal maybe slightly odd, but that is from Canals and Rivers Trust. So the date is 1960. But then if they're moving stuff around on the canal, surely that's commercial traffic. This is a David Johns cruising the cut style question, isn't it? Or a Jeff Marshall question. That's a clarification. It's the late 60s. By the late 60s, commercial traffic had all but ceased on the canal, all but ceased. So you know, I'll put the quote on the screen. I love the way that goose just glided out across the water to meet those two swans there. It's a really lovely moment. So through this tunnel that goes under the Mile End Road, and I suppose we should think about the people who used to leg the barges through the tunnels. Using their legs pushed against the walls, they would propel the barges through the tunnels. That must have been incredibly hard work, not so particularly when we get to the Angel Tunnel. So I think here there is room for the horses, I imagine, to pull the barges through the tunnel. So that would have been all right. Maybe it's just the Angel Tunnel where they had to leg the barges through until they had locomotives to do it. But you can just imagine the sound of the horses' hooves as they went through this tunnel. It would have made the sound of the bikes relatively trivial. And the last horse-drawn commercial barge was pulled on the Regents Canal in 1956, which is much later than I would have thought. Mile End Lock, number 9. And that shift from the industrial use, and you can imagine how busy the docks would have been with all the kind of goods coming from across Empire, shunted onto barges, then brought around through London to the Paddington Basin, where they would have joined the Grand Junction Canal and then gone up through the country. And one of my favourite anecdotes from that period of time was they saw it as a really quick means to move soldiers around. You imagine they had the Atlantic ports at Liverpool and I guess elsewhere in the northwest, but far up in the northwest around Liverpool. And then you had the other docks here, so you could move soldiers from one end of the country to the other was what they saw. And I think that journey took something like 10 days by barge, travelling across the country, along with all the other things, you know, herbs and spices and all the other goods and things flowing in both directions. And now what flows in both directions are people living on their boats. A lot of people now live on their boats here. But it's also become a wildlife haven as well. And the wharves have become flats, the warehouses have become flats, the old factory, I mean, everything's just become flats really, hasn't it? The first plans to build the Regents Canal come from right at the beginning of the 19th century. Opens 1816, then finalised 1820, and then you get the railways come along, competing for the same traffic, the same commercial traffic. And in the 1840s there were sort of various plans to turn this, the Regents Canal, into a railway, the Regents Canal Railway. And if they'd been successful, we wouldn't have this beautiful walk to do, would we? And that was a theme across the country, where you see the railways and the canals running side by side, because they both need relatively level ground to travel along. Roman Road crossing the canal up there, of course, roughly follows the route of the Roman road that crossed the River Lee. An ancient thoroughfare. So here we've got a wide part of the canal. I think that is to allow turning for boats entering and exiting the Hertford Union Canal, which links the Regents Canal to the River Lee navigation. Very short stretch of canal, I believe not the shortest in the country. And I've walked along there before. I will link that below in a video. And this is where the Regents Canal passes through Victoria Park, or passes along the edge of Victoria Park, I should say, which has a number of really lovely water features. And in Michael Lepestry's book, sorry, I can't remember the name, it's a long name. It's actually interesting, Michael is also the author of the New River Guide book, and of course I will do the New River Walk this year. I don't think I'll attempt it in a single day, but I'll certainly do a big chunk of it in a day. Anyway, that's a sort of like an aside. But he shows a map with the kind of land that the canal was proposed to pass through. Can you imagine? It was quite a political act to kind of get together all the parcels of land so you could build the canal through it. And here we have the land of Bishop Bonner, who lived in Bonner Hall, that was here. There's a number of other obviously notable kind of landmarks along the way. Agar House was one of them, in Agar Grove, and so on and so forth, which is interesting. And the name, the Regents Canal, comes from simply because the architect of the canal and one of the early investors was the architect John Nash. And John Nash was friends with the Prince Regent and got permission from the Prince Regent to use his name. I'm guessing it might have been to attract investors to the scheme. It was initially it was a private enterprise. And it's interesting here, you can see that the boats are double parked here. No one wants to be down in the Limehouse section, do they? They want to be up here at Victoria Park, it seems. And you got the food market over there in Victoria Park at the weekend. The smells are delicious. I haven't had lunch, but I think I'm going to sit down somewhere on the towpath and have my lunch. I wonder how many people live on London's canal network. There's a few canals in London. You can see here there's so many people just along the stretch here. Because these are mostly, you know, what do you call them, liveaboard people? Is that the correct term? Rather than leisure cruisers. I think it's a significant number of people live on the water in London. I have no idea what this is. I don't think anyone's living on that. I think it's a project. That's what it looks like. Definitely someone's project.
I've been on the canals now 3 years and it's really peaceful and quiet because it's not got all the busy bustling traffic right next to your house, because there's trees and nature around it. So you're more connected to the world that's getting displaced because we're building more buildings, but there's trees next to me and I feel at peace.
And it's really peaceful at night time?
Yeah, when it gets dark it's really quiet. There's not a sound unless an ambulance is in the background or a police car. I have friends on the water, and when I went to go see them I was a bit like jealous that I didn't have my own place, because London's got so expensive that all the younger people can't afford to buy a place.
And are you a continuous cruiser?
Yeah, I'm a continuous cruiser.
What does that mean?
A continuous cruiser means that you move like every 2 weeks. So you move around the network and I get to see new places, I get to meet new people, and it's just a way of getting a good connection in a community.
And do you just stay on the Regents Canal?
No, I go on the River Lee, I can go to Birmingham, I can go to Manchester, I can go to Bath and Bristol, I can go across the country, I can go to Wales if I want.
Do you do that?
I have been to Wales on my boat.
That's amazing. Do you think you'll stay on the canal?
Yeah, I think I'll stay on the canal for a lot longer. I don't have any plans to leave yet.
And in terms of like the cost of living on the canal compared to the cost of living on land, is it significantly cheaper?
It's quite significantly cheaper. Right now it is, with the cost of living crisis.
Hey, Jacob, tell me a little bit about your boat.
Yeah, okay. So my boat's called Gordon, which is ironic for a name, but it's a 38-foot Springer, which means it's got a V-shaped hull, which means it's better to be on the rivers because flat bottoms, it'll rock with the waves better.
And do you have any difficulty navigating the canal?
No, it's easy than a wide beam because it's not as wide and some locks are more narrow elsewhere across the network. She was made in 1986. She was made to be a cruising boat for tours in the Midlands.
How lovely to have a little chat with Jacob there, who was just in his boat, and I was getting some shots of that elaborate boat, that other boat, which is quite, it tells me apparently it's someone's man cave. That's a canal boater's man cave. He just goes and hangs out in it, which is lovely, that big silver thing. But yeah, Jacob telling us about the canal there. How wonderful. Coming up through Hackney now, that's Broadway Market, just up ahead. That's Mare Street Bridge there. I really love the scale of this bridge here. It's obviously a railway bridge, but it feels almost like cathedral-like in its majesty, its size. Those houses over there feel like they have a significant story to tell, because you can see, look, they've been built up all around them and they look of a significant age. They look at least sort of 19th century. And that's the black path there, crossing the canal, the continuation of Broadway Market, Hackney. That was a great walk I did back in January. This is Acton's Lock. That's my favourite name of the day so far. Gordon, obviously, because I spoke to Gordon's owner, but you can't beat a bit of Boudica, particularly as we're not far from King's Cross, and of course Battle Bridge is associated with the legend of Boudica. It cost £772,000 to build the Regents Canal when it was built, for that original opening in 1816, which is a lot of money in those days, isn't it? Which wasn't helped by the fact that one of the early promoters of the canal embezzled funds from it, so they had to raise more money. And of course, that was the original cost was twice what they had planned. So it's nice to see that this creep of costs is not a modern problem with large infrastructure projects. Or anyone counting the bridges? There's two here. This one in the foreground, another one just down there, not far away. What I love about walks like this is it's sort of irrelevant where we are in London. I couldn't exactly tell you where we are, but we're south of the City Road Basin, basically. But it doesn't actually matter very much at all. It will matter when we arrive there, but that will be obvious. The wonderful LaBerge Boat Club over there.
Don't want her to be my friend.
How do you spell it? I did kayaking there a couple of times. They used to do sort of just dropping sessions. I can't remember which night of the week. One midweek night, you could just pay a fee and take a kayak out on the Regents Canal. It was a brilliant experience. At the time, I was transformed by it. I thought that was going to be my life. So we're just coming up through Shoreditch now. Now moving in on the territory of which I have quite a lot of memory and association. So we have Gainsborough Wharf over there, which must be on or around the site of the Gainsborough Studios where Alfred Hitchcock made some of his early films. Pretty sure that must be in a video. Just trying to think which one. And this is Sturt's Lock. Quite a big gap between locks, the longest gap between locks that we've had so far, which indicates a certain amount of level ground, I guess. The narrowboat here, right on the towpath, is very tempting, but I will resist. So here's the magnificent City Road Basin. It's one of two large basins along the course of the canal. Obviously we have the Limehouse Basin at one end, Paddington at the other. And then along the way we have two significant basins. This one here and one just at Camden, or really it's King's Cross, but they call it the Camden Basin, I think. This would have been lined with wharfs. It was a major sort of place where goods were taken off and put on. And now it's just this beautiful expanse of water. I think also as well, it was the launch pad for the celebration of the opening of the Angel Tunnel, the Islington Tunnel, which we'll see in about 10, well, I was going to say 10 minutes, 10 minutes for me, obviously, hopefully for you, about 30 seconds. And here we have City Road Lock. And this section here between City Road Basin and the Islington Tunnel, and the bit on the other side, is my favourite part of the Regents Canal walk. I love this section along here. And I love this approach to the Islington Tunnel. It's like a relic in the jungle, isn't it? Just emerging there, this black chasm up ahead. I think it's the most special thing on this entire section of canal, the entire length of the canal, I should say. And of course we can't walk through it. There's no towpath through the tunnel. When they started planning the canal, they knew there was going to be an issue here at the Angel. And the idea of building a tunnel was quite ambitious because there'd recently been a failure to build a tunnel sort of from Archway up to Highgate. And so it was quite an ambitious undertaking, and they started to do the work, and then they stopped, they started and they stopped. And then eventually in 1817 they did commence the work. They had to raise extra funds to do this work. It's 1,000 yards long, I believe. It's 1,000 yards long, so it's quite long. It takes a half an hour to get through. And originally people had to leg through. They had to lay on their banks, and they had planks, and they would push their legs along through the tunnel. And pretty soon they realised this had to be done by professional leggers, people, leg men, whose job it was to leg the barges through the tunnel. And then they discovered that there was an easier way of doing it by having tugboats pull the barges through. But of course then, like they said, the danger was that you would choke from the fumes from the tugs. I guess they were must have been coal powered, I guess. And then eventually they realised they could pull them through with ropes, with a rope and pulley system. And there's a number of kind of contemporary accounts of the unpleasantness of trying to travel through the Islington Tunnel at that time. I've done that journey before, and it's intense. It's intense to go through because you're in darkness for quite a while. Obviously, I will drop that footage on here and I'll put a link below to the whole video. I made a video of just the passage through the Islington Tunnel. And a story I've told, I don't know how many times, I'm going to tell it again because this is the Regents Canal walk, is when they opened the tunnel, they were so proud of themselves and they got a flotilla of barges with, I think it was like 100-piece orchestra on, which assembled down there at the City Road Basin and then proceeded through the tunnel. But they carried on playing through the tunnel, and big crowds of people gathered at either end of the tunnel to hear the music. I mean, what a cacophony that would have been. I did the journey through the tunnel, by the way, was for a project, and I showed some clips of films and did a bit of a talk. And they said, you know, what do you want to do, you know, for the rest of your thing? I said, I want a band playing as we go through the tunnel. And there was a band that I'd met through the artist Bornlof Smith, and they were up for it. It was all good, but then eventually the Canals and Rivers Trust vetoed it on the basis of the amount of noise we would make. So we had to satisfy ourselves with just playing a bit of classical music from a boombox as we went through the tunnel. Not the same thing. So we leave the canal at this point here. Only time we have to leave the canal as it passes beneath the streets of the Angel Islington. But there are little markers on the pavement, and we'll pick it up on the other side of the Angel, and I'm going to stop for some lunch along the way. But they have these very handy little Islington Tunnel towpath link markers here to guide you through the streets of Islington. It's pretty straightforward actually. You just come up off the canal here and you just go straight through the N1 centre. Anyway, I'll show you. Now, if you're inclined to break your walk with a drink, there's two fine options here. The York, which is bang over the tunnel, bang over the canal, or if you just go down this way and down Camden Passage, you've got the brilliant Camden Head. I'm not going in either of them if I drink the alcohol. I mean, I'm at work. I mean, can't drink while I'm at work. And we're just going to cross up a street, a place that has a big chunk of my heart here. And straight over the road from the York, you've got the Angel Centre. It used to be called the N1 Centre. I remember this opening. And you just go straight through here. So on the other side of the Angel Centre, we'll go down the legendary historic Chapel Market. One of the iconic locations in London, I would say. It's late on a Sunday afternoon, so hence it's all sort of packed away. What, the Alma? This show does say closed for a new look. That's really, because that is like one of the iconic Islington pubs, the Alma. But it looks like it will be opening soon. Although it does look like it's become some sort of like brewery tap type place. Which generally I'm in favour of that, but I think the Alma should be left alone really. And another one of the great iconic locations of Islington here. Man's Pie and Mash Shop and live eels. Memorably captured in The London Nobody Knows, the wonderful film based on the Geoffrey Fletcher book. Amazing scene, probably the best scene in the book. Egg crushing scene is pretty good, but the second best scene is the scene of all the live eels writhing around in the tub there. That closed, I think, about 2 years ago or so. Very sad. But another Islington icon is left untouched, Indian veg. Eat what you can buffet. Eat what you love and love what you eat. Yeah, bring your own. It's great. Actually, I haven't been there for a very long time. I'm overdue a visit there, maybe with Dave Binns. And this is another great Islington institution, although it doesn't look in particularly good shape there, does it? I hope it's still open. Alpino, Italian snack bar. This was a place frequented by Ian Sinclair. I think it's mentioned in London Orbital when he did one of the walks. But I remember being really excited about that discovery. when I lived around the corner from here. See, I've avoided mentioning that until now. So we've crossed Penton Street, because of course here we are on the Penton Mound. And we just turn right to go up to the Barnsbury Estate, which is the route of the tunnel, and it's where I used to live. And look, we have our Islington Canal Tunnel plaque here on the pavement, just near the job centre and opposite Puddle Street, because that is where the tunnel is running down Puddle Street really, or just to the left of Puddle Street as we look at it. I just wanted to go down Chapel Market, and of course Puddle Street is so named after the massive protest procession that came through the area, but I can't think it was like 100,000 people marching against the transportation of the Puddle martyrs. If I feel like I'm slightly skipping through the history of this bit, it's because I've made so many videos around here, and I think my second most viewed video is about this sort of area, you know, the Little Italy and up through here, although I end up in the dark here, but it's also written about in my book, This Other London. Yeah, my first book, This Other London. See, I'm not plugging the books remorselessly, although by the time you see this video, I would have uploaded the conversation I had with Ian Sinclair in Hatchards. By the way, what funny thing is, there's a bloke who goes through all my videos. I presume he must be watching them all, and his only comment on them is whether or not I mention Ian Sinclair or not, which I kind of like. It's become a little game, I feel like, between me and him. It's quite charming. And this pub here should be one of the iconic locations of not just Islington but of London. It is overlooked, hence it's in my book, This Other London Adventures in the Overlooked City, because this was White Conduit House, which was one of the many pleasure gardens that were around Islington, around the springs of Islington, the Wells and Springs, sort of resorts for Londoners to come and have their pleasure and their games. All sorts of things went on at the pleasure gardens. But one of the things that went on here that makes it most notable is it's where cricket was played, and amongst the cricketers was a bloke called Thomas Lord. And it's Thomas Lord who decided that, you know, they need somewhere to play where all the hoi polloi weren't hanging out. And so he had a field in Marylebone, where we will be going on this walk. And that became Lord's Cricket Ground. But this is where they used to play. So I say this is the original home of cricket when I do my little walking tour through here. I love it. And it was a significant location at the time of the building of the Regents Canal. And there's an etching in Michael Essex Lepestry's book that shows basically the White Conduit House standing above the cutting where they built the tunnel, and there it was exposed. There's a wonderful image of White Conduit House that I hadn't seen before, showing as well the conduit itself that went down and fed the St John's Priory in Clerkenwell. And this is the Barnsbury Estate where I lived. I lived here for 4 years when my kids were born. Incredibly important part of my life, and a place where I have so many of the happiest memories. I get quite sentimental and emotional and nostalgic when I walk through here. But it's one of the reasons why I'll always love this area. And of course, it's really when I really got deep into my London studies, walking around day after day after day, making notes and researching. So we're going to go down here on this side of the job centre, on the Barnsbury Estate side, Berners' house over there to our right, down the alleyway, and then we'll reconnect with the canal. Just down here in Muriel Street. We get back to the canal here. What does it say? Just some information about the canal. I just want to try and think if there's something here I haven't mentioned. I don't think so. I mean, I'm not bigging myself up, but I think that's just the sort of basics. And there it is, the other end of the Islington Tunnel. I can imagine how relieved people would have been to come out the other side, particularly when there was a steam tug pulling you through, spewing out fumes into that tunnel. And there's a slightly sort of very sad and tragic story relating to this very section of the canal here from when I lived, just up above the tunnel there. And I was in the corner shop there at the front of the estate, trying to get some baby milk and some nappies. And some lads came running into the shop, really sort of hyped and excited and a bit kind of, I don't know, I guess they'd gone through a hell of an experience. They were down here fishing, right just down here. And they fished out a suitcase that was very heavy, and they opened it up, and it contained body parts. And they were describing exactly the gruesome nature of what they found in the suitcase to the guy behind the shop. This was just after they'd found it. It had just happened, and I stood there behind them in the queue with my baby milk and my nappies listening to this horrific story. It's very sad. It was the body of a sex worker who worked in this area and had been murdered and chopped up and dumped in the canal in suitcases. It's really horrible, really gruesome. And the juxtaposition to that gruesome story is this is where we used to walk in the morning with Oliver in his pram, pushing him along here in his pram. On those early morning walks, you know, when you're hoping they'll go back to sleep for a little bit. And that's the thing my old mate Nick Papadimitriou talks about with this practice of walking around the urban landscape and looking into it to see what we can see, to discover what we can discover. And you gotta, it's not all just lightness and interesting, curious facts. There's darkness here as well, and in a way you have to accept that alongside the other stuff, you know. That's what Nick says sort of marks out his practice of deep topography, although it's kind of present in psychogeography as well. In fact, some people might say it's overly present in psychogeography. And that's the iconic Caledonian Road passing over the top there. You can see the building to the right there is called Bridge Wharf. And I've made a video walking up Caledonian Road, which is another I will link to below. Regents Wharf here, and you can see how industrial this section of the canal would have been, as it all would have been, of course. But the basin coming up, which I think is called Camden Basin, is said to have been the busiest of the basins along the course of the canal. So here's the Battle Bridge Basin here, and you can see, look how huge it is. It's absolutely vast. And just to the left there, I think it's to the left, is you've got the London Canal Museum. And I've never been to the London Canal Museum, would you believe? All the time I lived here, I feel like I might have taken the kids down there to a sort of workshop thing, but not actually to go around the museum. Incredible. I'll have to rectify that. York Way, crossing the canal there. Another great historic road and connected to the great mythology of Elizabeth Gordon's prehistoric mounds of London. And the nature of the canal changes once more as we pass through the new King's Cross. Let's replace the old railway yards here. These great big office blocks here, so many of the large companies now based in King's Cross and all sorts of stuff here. If you want to see what this area looked like in the 80s even, the wonderful Mike Leigh film called High Hopes, and the couple live in a block of flats, a council flat in this area here, so you see this as it was not that long ago really. That's a wonderful thing there, Word on the Water, a floating bookshop. Never been there before, heard about it, never been there. What a wonderful thing. And this is a nice thing they've created here at King's Cross, this kind of raked seating here where you can sit on the AstroTurf and just look out across the canal. We're about to head through Camden Town now with the famous Camden Lock. And this is St Pancras Lock. You can see here where they built the flats inside the gasometers, I think because the gasometers are listed, so I don't think they could be removed. I think this is St Pancras Basin here. So here we're passing through the ancient parish of St Pancras with its famous St Pancras Old Church, a place laden with history and myth. And it's mentioned in the at the time of the building because this is the site of the St Pancras Workhouse, which I guess was a significant location. And also Agar Town was along here where they used to pile up the soot and the rubbish from the city. Mounds and mounds and mounds of it, like a mountain range of rubbish. Camden Town just up ahead with its numerous tempting drinking holes right on the canal. I seem to remember, I think these flats here over the canal were quite notable at one point. Maybe even they are now to students of architecture. Kentish Town Road passing overhead. And here we have Kentish Town Lock. Hawley Lock here with its famous pub, the Hawley Arms. There's a Camden Town walking tour on my channel here that will be amongst the links below. I hope I remember to put it there. And here we have Camden High Street on this beautiful old iron bridge, and it actually has the coat of arms, or the logo, the symbol of the Regents Canal Company on it, which is the first time I've seen it. I've probably missed a few. And I was about to say this must be Camden Lock, but it's Hampstead Road Lock. There you go. I would have thought I could confidently have named this one, but you never can be too sure, can you? And it's about 7 o'clock in the evening, and it's been a pretty windy day, but now out in the sun it's lovely. And look, you can see Camden Town is full of life, as it always is. One of the greatest areas of London, Camden Town. We have to pass through the Lock Market a little bit here. I might have to cross the canal for the first time. Yeah, for the first time. I'm not sure yet. Heron over there has obviously come for a bit of takeaway. No, it's fine. I can stay on the same side of the canal as we leave the noise and bustle of Camden Town. Soon we'll be going through London Zoo. This is where you have the really, really grand, very expensive houses backing onto the canal. I was going to say there's the famous Chinese pagoda, but I don't know how famous it is. In my mind it is, but I think it's just a Chinese restaurant, isn't it? And I was just thinking, all day we've seen so few craft moving on the canal. I can't think, I've seen a few at locks, but very few moving. We're just passing around the outer edge of Regents Park here, with London Zoo to our left. Yeah, I think this is where the monkeys live here, just beside the canal. So up ahead, this must be the Macclesfield Bridge, which was the site of one of the most famous incidents in the history of the Regents Canal when, in 1874, a gunpowder barge exploded, completely blowing up the bridge and sending debris flying in all directions through the air. Well, this section here through Regents Park has been by far and away the most bucolic. In fact, you could go as far as to say it's been the only bucolic section of the canal, which, let's be honest, it is an urban canal. Now we are essentially passing through the fields of Marylebone, or Marylebone as it's now known. Back out into the urban realm of West London as we walk into sunset. That's intense to be under there when a tube train goes over the top. If anyone was still counting the bridges, I think I might have missed one out actually in the footage. I don't know whether we count these as separate bridges or just one. It's like a load of tube lines crossing here. So I think it's like four individual bridges if you're being strict about it. Now this is interesting, Liston Grove Moorings. I might not be able to walk through here. Oh yeah, I've got to go around it, it's locked. That's a pain. I haven't seen a way to leave here, which is interesting. Oh. So I've had to walk all the way back to that tube bridge and I'm going to have to go up there now. It's a pain. This is a great example of how making an assumption caught me out, because I thought today this is an easy walk. Just walk along the canal, apart from even the Angel bit's easy. And so I didn't actually research the route. So I thought I knew the route, and the only research I thought is a bit of history which I've got in that book, and a bit from the Canal and River Trust website. So I actually don't know how far I have to walk along the roads here, which is a bit annoying. Heidi, actually this morning, she did say, she said, oh, I think you have to leave the canal a few times. And I thought, how would she know that? Surely we've only ever walked it together. Another example of where my wife was right. As ever. Nice bit. This is that iron bridge, one of those iron bridges. So we're going down Lodge Road here, which runs parallel to the canal. So we'll go down here, down Liston Grove, where we should be able to see the canal, although we've got the Maida Hill Tunnel coming up, so I'm not sure we can get back on the towpath at this point or not, but we're very close to the end now, so. Wow. This is very high up here above the canal. That was quite a substantial bridge that we stood on top of actually, so it doesn't look like you can go very far. I'll walk as far as I can through this estate here, and then I'll probably have to go around the Maida Hill Tunnel. I think they're renovating a bridge or repairing a bridge or something, so normally you would be able to cross the canal back there, I think, or maybe the moorings are open, but I can see here that bridge, the towpath is blocked off, so fenced off. So maybe you do walk on the other side, but that bridge was shrouded in something. It was all wrapped up. In fact, I think we're going to have to go around here. That's the Maida Hill Tunnel. We'll get a view of that. And then we have to walk around to Little Venice. And from Little Venice, I think we can just walk down to Paddington Basin. So that down there is the Maida Hill Tunnel. It's nowhere near as long as the Islington Tunnel, but leads into Little Venice, I think. So at the end of this street, past the Crocker's Folly pub there on the right, at the end of the street we can get back on the canal, unless I'm very much mistaken. This is quite a posh street, this, except it does have a massive electricity substation in it. So this is Edgware Road, and I think the canal is just behind that cafe there on the other side of the road, in that very grand apartment block. Edgware Road, of course, is built along the alignment of Roman Watling Street. That's one of the great ancient roads of Britain. And we are now in Maida Vale. Started the day in Limehouse, and we're passing into Maida Vale, and we'll end at Paddington, hopefully. Wow, this restaurant here is built right over the canal. Look at that. That's pretty intense. And here's the final section of the Regents Canal as it leads into Little Venice. And I haven't been down here for a very long time. And another instance here where the moorings are locked off. If you're walking this, you're doing the way I've done it, walk on the other side here, because I'm not going to walk around, but that's a better side, I think. Better view of the canal. Welcome to Little Venice. So I think we can get on the towpath here. So here it is, Little Venice. It's beautiful, isn't it? I haven't been here for a few years. And this really is a really important spot because it's here, the waterway you can see on the left flows into this big basin here, and then this is where it meets the Grand Junction Canal. So that was the real purpose of the Regents Canal, was to connect the docks down there at Limehouse to the rest of the canal network that stretched across the country. At this point here, there is a little section that goes around the corner here to the left down to Paddington Basin. But this here is a very important point. And the two canal companies eventually merged to form the Grand Union Canal. So this short section of the canal takes us into the Paddington Basin. Again, I think I'm on the wrong side here, but even so, as long as I can walk along it, I don't care. Lots of new waterside development here at Paddington, and I think actually I need to walk over there anyway, so first time for me over there, I believe. If we're still counting bridges, I think that's just one bridge there. The other one's the flyover. I don't think that counts. This, on the other hand, this metal bridge definitely counts. Is this the newest? Is this the newest bridge over the Regents Canal, I wonder? And the terminus of our walk is just down there. It's taken a while, but there's a reference to the guy it's named after, the Prince Regent. This is a bridge, by the way. And this is interesting here, this entrance to Paddington Station right by the canal, which I guess in a way mirrors Limehouse DLR, Limehouse Basin in a way, I guess. But also, you know, it kind of is the perfect marriage of the railway and the canal at long last. And it looks as if I have to cross the canal again. I think I've had to cross the canal more in the last 200 yards than I have in the whole walk combined. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know exactly where the canal ends. This is Paddington Basin here. This is the terminus, but we'll keep going till we run out of water, I think. So I think the end of the canal is just down there, here on Merchant Square. So here is the terminus of the Regents Canal, as far as I can tell, which is quite an incredible spot in the Paddington Basin. Looking back here along the length of the Regents Canal, back along the walk I've just done, all throughout the afternoon into the evening. Wow! Well, what an absolutely epic walk. What a great traversing of the city from east to west, from Limehouse Basin to Paddington Basin along the Regents Canal, one of London's really major thoroughfares, such an important part of its story. And what an incredible, that's in my top 10 walks now, anywhere, ever. I've walked all of that in bits, apart from this last bit here, but to walk it in one go. What I do recommend is not doing what I've just done. I started about 2:30, 2:45, I think, more or less, or just, yeah, about 2:30, and it's now just after 8. I would say take a day to do it. take a day and stop off along the way. Stop at all the pubs, cafes, visit some of the sites along the way. Take an entire kind of good 10-hour day. So, as I always like to say, thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing the next walk, wherever that may be. And here for my dad's tune now. I'm going to go to the pub, so it's very appropriate.
It's over the meadow, over the stream, it's where I am going and where I have been. It's been a long day now, it's time for a beer, and now for home, of course I must steer.